Well, Paul Finebaum comes in with a big take on the dogs, saying that Georgia is the epicenter of college football right now. He actually went on to one other thing that was said this week on that show, which is kind of fascinating during the season, from Greg McElroy. At this point, Georgia is a superpower, and Florida is trying to pick up the pieces of what was once a special 2020 season. But Georgia's the epicenter of college football right now. That's true, but they're about to take an epicenter nap because the focus of this season is going to shift from Athens, Georgia, to the Big Ten and the Big Ten East, and perhaps what's going on everywhere else besides Georgia. When you think about the start of this season with the Clemson game, the build up to this season was 9 months of Georgia Clemson. And here we are 9 weeks later, and Clemson's fallen off a cliff in a way I did not expect. I thought they would not be as good, but and then Georgia's had the Clemson game, they've had the Arkansas game, the Kentucky game, and the Auburn game, and now they've played the Gators. I'm sure there was a game in there in between, but this team has played on national television all but once, which was the Vanderbilt game, and it's looking like, well, actually, we know now they will play all but two games on national television. They have been the forefront. They have been people have been thinking about them all the time. They had game day twice with the Clemson game and then the Kentucky game. You're going to have game day for the SEC championship game, almost certainly. It could be the Big Ten championship. I kind of doubt it, but um, Georgia's getting a lot of attention. I have been a nerd about television and college football and just television, generally speaking, and the influence of it on society and in sport for a long, long time, ever since I was in college. And, Ohio State and Alabama have the two largest brands nationally in terms of football. And right after that, it's Georgia, Notre Dame, and perhaps LSU or Oklahoma. LSU's struggling right now with things. LSU also benefits from having a rivalry with Alabama. Um, it is curious to see what the next half a decade or decade will be like for Georgia and its power, because for so long Georgia has been on the cusp of doing something great but not done it. And not just in football, but in a lot of sports. I mean, when you think about the failures of the Georgia basketball program for the men over the last 20 years, it's inexcusable how bad they've been. But we're about to see what you can do with all of the might and power and everybody pushing the same way at Georgia. Georgia has never been as dysfunctional as Texas has been over these last 10 years. I mean, I can't think of a time when Georgia's been that dysfunctional. And I'm going to be watching to see what happens when the momentum continues. It's really important because they don't take national championships away, don't take the glory of those things away, no matter what happened to SC a decade ago. Those moments live on forever, and they're giving you the ability to raise money, to hire. The prestige gets higher, the brand gets higher and larger. You know, teams like or programs like Georgia, Florida, Alabama, LSU, they can recover real quick. Just maybe 2 years time, you're back on track. So this Georgia team and Kirby has to take advantage of this situation. It's another way of saying they really do need to win the national championship or win the SEC this year. To some degree, that goes without saying. But this 9 weeks of football, Georgia has been the epicenter, and they're gonna fade back in the pack in terms of how much attention they're getting, because the discussion is going to be about the Big Ten. The discussion is going to be about Oklahoma and Cincinnati, and can they figure out how to wiggle their way in? And then when the SEC championship game gets here, the attention is going to explode again. But for these next 4 weeks, when Georgia takes Missouri and chokes it by its own tail, by the time they go up to Tennessee and probably win that game solidly, perhaps not spectacularly, by the time they kick Charleston Southern back to the Wando River, And by the time that they absolutely smother Georgia Tech for the joke that it has become under Jeff Collins, those games no one's going to pay attention to. But the second they get off the field at Mark Richt Field at Bobby Dodd Stadium, you'll see the attention focus laser sharp on the Dogs again. It will focus laser sharp nationally on them. Paul's right. Georgia's at the epicenter, and the earthquake's already hit, but it's coming back in 4 weeks. I'm telling you. Now, when you put your comments in, just realize that I don't play on the team. I don't work for the school. That's not my role. So don't talk about focus and all this stuff. That's Kirby's job. That's not my job. That's not what I'm here to do. That's not what you're here to do either. You're here to be entertained, to watch the Dogs, to listen to what I have to say about it. It's not our job to get our mind right. That's their job. That's their problem. And that's why they get the glory. And that's why they get the blame if it's not their head's not in the right space. I'm just telling you what's reflecting nationally, which is that Georgia has been, from the moment that they started preseason practice, and perhaps before that at media days, the Clemson game focused everyone nationally on Georgia. And I remember being, underneath the in the corridors at Bank of America, and everybody making a big deal about Alabama and Miami, and the way that Alabama was, drop kicking them, which was not a surprise. Alabama, steamroller. Blah, blah, blah. Narratives change over a season, and right now Alabama is chasing Georgia, and we've not seen that very much. We've not seen that since 2007. So it's been a long time in the league that Alabama has not been the lead dog coming into November. But that's the case right now. They've been killed off in November before in 2019, but they've very rarely been killed off before the SEC championship game. My suspicion is they won't be killed off before then either. But it's just different in the league right now when you start talking about the number one team in the country from the SEC. It's not Alabama. So there's some getting used to here. And it's going to take Georgia fans some time to get used to this new reality too. They have for so long and for too long not realized the power of the institution, of the state, of the people in the state, which is really Georgia's best resource. They've not understood how powerful Georgia is. More powerful than Florida, not by a lot, but it is more powerful. It's more powerful than Alabama. It's more powerful than LSU. And those three schools are really their competitor nationally and in the league. Florida hadn't gotten it right for a decade or longer. LSU, they've gotten it right once in the last decade, but it's been a disaster for the bulk of that time. Alabama knows totally what they're doing and taking advantage of everything. But if Georgia ever harnesses its full strength, power, and might, very few teams, Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, a USC that's not tripping over its own shoelaces, very few people can really deal with Georgia, Florida too. So there's not a big bunch. That's what I'm watching to see. When Paul talks about Georgia's at the epicenter of college football right now, it might not be just right now. It could be for a while, but that's up to them. Killing off the bear in Alabama, you're going to have to shoot that thing twice. It doesn't just go away. And until Alabama is beaten and perhaps vanquished by Georgia itself, the narrative's not going to change. And if Georgia goes undefeated 15-0, beats Alabama on the way to a national championship, they still will not have gotten over the hump, because a season from now, it will be about Georgia and Alabama again. So this is what it is. Now, if you're the Dogs, that's a good place to be in. If you're old enough to remember beating Georgia Tech being a big deal, you know that being into a fight with Alabama is a good thing. And, hey, Alabama hadn't always had it figured out either. Let me take you back to the turn of the century, where it was a train wreck for them. Mike DuBose, So it's about taking advantage of your situation, the coach that you got, and the institutional buy-in that you have at any given moment. Kirby's got that. Georgia's got that right now. They need to get on a run. That run will begin a little bit later this season. We're probably 5 weeks from it when they play in the SEC championship game. But you got to get on a run. Got to get on a run. We'll see you over on the website, dogpost.com.